Start with contracting sprites. Chapter 91, Volcanic Evolution. The little rascal's illusion experiment was successful, but it also failed. It took a total of 2 to 3 minutes to continuously sprinkle hypnotic spiritual force on the armored crab before casting dream building on it in exchange for more than 10 seconds of unstable illusionary spells. The little rascal said that it had used a few tricks from the illusion stone to continuously deepen its hints. However, in the end, the armored crab still broke free from the illusion. It was just that despite armored crab's big and fierce exterior, its mind was actually very weak and timid. Even after breaking free from the illusion, it was still stuck in fear. The armored crab wasn't injured much. Instead, it fainted from fear. The lack of destructive power was one of the reasons for failure. The other reason was the time needed for the construction of the illusion. If it was a killer mantis or other sprites, the reverie butterfly would need to spend most of its energy on dodging, and it wouldn't be able to divert its attention to construct an illusion. Real combat indeed exposed many problems. Su Hao also thought of some simple countermeasures. For example, reducing the complexity of the illusion could only be used as the simplest visual interference. You can try an extremely bright or dark environment. Suddenly falling into such an environment can make a sprite lose its mind for a short period of time. However, strong sprites have sharp senses, they don't just rely on their eyes to fight. The enhanced version can develop illusions that can disrupt the opponent's 5 senses, such as sudden cessation, reversal of gravity, direction confusion, and so on. When the illusion is complete, I'll try the 100% real illusion. I'll take it one step at a time. The little rascal seemed to be lost in thought. Su Hao told it to specialize in 1 or 2 illusion templates first. For example, during the development process of a game, the modeling of an important scene should be done first. It could then be used repeatedly. A slight modification would result in several different scenes. There was no way it could reserve the unique skill dream building first. However, after it had familiarized itself with a certain illusion, it wouldn't need to spend too much effort constructing the illusion in the future. It just needed to make adjustments according to the target. That way, while maintaining the illusion, it could multitask and use other unique skills. Gurgle, gurgle. The little rascal nodded after understanding the situation. As expected of Su Hao, he had his own 30%, no, 20% intelligence now. Speaking of which, Su Hao was still a little curious. What illusion did you cast on the armored crab just now? Gurgle, gurgle. As Reverie Butterfly recalled, its expression resembled a gourmet commenting on a feast. Little Fire Crow, which was listening by the side, was already hungry. Su Hao fell silent. So, it was steamed king crabs, stir-fried shuttle crabs, spicy little crabs, steamed crabs with sea pepper, crab hot pot, steamed crabs in iron pot, stir-fried crabs with onions and ginger. And an enormous armored crab. He was indeed hungry. I'll bring you guys for a crab feast tonight. Gurgle. My plan worked. 1 month later. It was still the official battle area in Magic City's White Elephant Battle Club. Gurgle. Reverie Butterfly's eyes widened. On the opposite side, the evolved form of a golden armored sprite, golden armored strongman, made eye contact with Reverie Butterfly. It merely felt a wave of black mist envelop it, before it instantly felt sleepy as its vision fell into complete darkness. The solace of its feet became an abyss, and it fell continuously. It panicked and struggled in the illusion. But the next moment, in reality, a constantly accumulating ball of energy was smacked right on its face. The golden armored strongman, which barely managed to break free from the illusion, was dizzy from the impact. Before it could react, it was drowned in the continuously enlarging ball of energy. Boom! 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 Golden armored strongman lost its battle ability. Reverie Butterfly won. Little Fire Crow, which was a lot bigger, was about to offer a cup of milk tea to Big Sister. Taking advantage of the fact that the little rascal couldn't leave the stage, Su Hao took the milk tea and slurped it. Then, he indicated for the dazed little fire crow to fetch another cup. Now that Reverie Butterfly has learned the Eye of Nightmare, its battle ability has improved greatly as well. Little Fire Crow has also broken through to entry level, and most of its holiday training has been completed. There's only one last thing left: arrange an evolution for Little Fire Crow, before we return to school. He didn't stay in Magic City all the time for the past month. Instead, he traveled to several cities. For example, there was an experienced master-level trainer in White Cloud City who owned 2 illusion-type sprites. That master opened a training class to the public for mental strength training. Su Hao brought Reverie Butterfly for the class, but unfortunately, the one teaching the class was a student under the master-level trainer. Su Hao even participated in a competition that wasn't that big of a scale, and won first place with Little Fire Crow, which had just entered entry level. Now, he had returned to Magic City again. This was because they could find the most suitable venue for Little Fire Crow's evolution near Magic City. An active volcano located in the New World had just erupted recently. It was not located at the entrance to Storm City, but the entrance of another place called Red Rock Town. The entrance was located in the mountains, dozens of kilometers away. Based on Earth's measurements, the distance between the two entrances wasn't far apart. But in the New World, one was a cold storm environment while the other was a scorching hot volcanic environment, both separated by thousands of miles. If it weren't for the few connecting strongholds in the New World, I'm afraid it would be hard to believe that they belong in the same world and not in countless worlds. Su Hao bought a ticket, submitted an application, and stepped into New World for the 3rd time. The sun was high up in the sky here, and heat waves rolled about. He hurriedly took off his jacket. Are you sure you want to head to the volcanic area? In view that you aren't an elite level sprite trainer yet, you need an elite level accompaniment when you leave the city. You can also hire sprite trainers guaranteed by the Union of Sprite Trainers and our Magic City Association. A staff member who was just an ordinary person explained. They had all undergone special training. Similar non-academic sprite trainers were also common in New World towns. Real sprite trainers were all assigned to highly needed positions. Su Hao looked over. There weren't many elites whom he could hire, only a dozen or so. He still remembered how he was targeted by sprite hunters, so he hired a relatively stronger sprite trainer. Huang Tianhu had 2 elite-level sprites. His trump card was a wind element winged tiger. The winged tiger was not the final evolved form, but its body was already no weaker than the second evolution of many pathways. Its final form, Red Flame Kyang Chi, possessed both wind and fire attributes. It was a sprite with an extremely high evolution threshold and was also very strong. Su Hao remembered that a Heavenly King had a Red Flame Kyang Chi trump card too. It's him. Huang Tianhu's hiring price was on par with his ability. However, Little Fire Crow's evolution would only last a maximum of half a day, so he hired him for just a day, which also was the lowest requirement. His hiring price wasn't much higher than Zhu Mingda's. Of course, the expenses he had spent in the Valley of Sighs a month ago were all waived. After waiting for about half an hour, Huang Tianhu, the sprite trainer, came. Behind him was an awe-inspiring winged tiger, the white-striped Tiger King with wings on its back. Along with another elite-level sprite, a gargoyle. They were all sprites that could fly. Su Hao chose him for this another reason too. When Huang Tianhu saw his client, he said, "The volcanic belt is quite a distance away. If there are no problems, let's set off now." Chapter 92, Flaming Cloud Crow, Flaming Feather Form. Across the endless brown land, 2 sprites spread open their wings and flew in the skies. Huang Tianhu sat on the back of his winged tiger. He bent over and hugged the winged tiger's neck firmly. Su Hao was a bit more miserable. Carried in the arms of the gargoyle, he held tightly onto its neck, which was made of rocks, to prevent himself from falling. Although it was only flying at a low altitude, and even though sprite commandeering could save his life if he fell. What if? Both Reverie Butterfly and Little Fire Crow similarly endured the howling wind and clung onto the gargoyle's body. There was no other way. Their flying speed was far slower than elite-level sprites. Even so, Su Hao stayed in the sky for more than half an hour before reaching his destination. When he landed on the ground, his legs became so weak that he almost couldn't stand still. Compared to the gargoyle, Heavenly King Zhou's Ocean-Tide Frog King really provided supreme VIP service. With this comparison, Su Hao had also experienced the huge difference between a monarch level and an elite level. The journey back then was pretty much the same, both reaching tens of kilometers. The gargoyle flew for more than half an hour, while the Sea-Tide Frog King only took a moment to sweep up a dozen people. A monarch-level sprite was really strong. They landed a few kilometers away from the active volcano. Looking from afar, grayish-white clouds covered the sky, and there was still some hot lava flowing on the ground in the distance. Waves of white smoke emerged in every spot they walked past. The ground was grayish-black, with a tint of translucent dark red within it. Smoke was still spewing out of the volcano mouth. Volcanic ash filled the air, igniting fear in people as they did not dare to approach. Su Hao didn't plan on getting too close either. It had only evolved for a short period of time. The active fire element spiritual energy, activated with the help of the active volcano nearby, was enough. If it really had to fly to the volcano mouth or soak itself in a magma hot spring, the current Little Fire Crow was far from being able to do that, not even after its evolution. But he spent a large sum of Dragon Nation currency and specially chose the evolution location near the volcanoes of the New World. Of course he had a purpose. By taking advantage of the evolution opportunity to absorb a large amount of volcanic energy and magma heat, I can combine the few unique skills that Little Fire Crow is currently skilled in to create a battle stance that is most suitable for it. He took into account Little Fire Crow's crooked path. Instead of properly spitting fire, it became a close combat assassin. He could only constantly think and conceptualize according to Little Fire Crow's battle style, but it really made him come up with something. After getting the approval of the interface, he unlocked the cultivation plan, and let it undergo special training for another month. He was only waiting for an evolution opportunity now. He looked over. Little Fire Crow's fighting spirit was high. The energy of the Feather of Flames had already been absorbed. There was some dark redness on its black feathers, and the cluster of feathers on its forehead was brighter. It was as though a cluster of flames was burning. Even Huang Tianhe, who was in charge of guarding them, couldn't help but take a few more looks. Regardless whether it was the impressive Little Fire Crow or the bright-eyed Reverie Butterfly, both had been nurtured too well. Huang Tianhe, who was also dedicated to nurturing sprites to the extreme, was deeply touched. Su Hao took out the evolution materials he had prepared a long time ago. It wasn't as complicated as Silkworm Baby's evolution, but it wasn't cheap either. 10 pieces of fire element essence. 2 kilograms of flame crystals. 2 fire element spiritual jades. Spiritual jades contain spiritual power purer than jade powder. There were also a few other materials. He put them into a basket and hung it onto Little Fire Crow's claws. Su Hao didn't dare to get too close to the volcano, so he could only let it hang by itself. It wasn't a big problem anyway. Go, Little Fire Crow. After Little Fire Crow swallowed 10 portions of fire element essence, its whole body glowed with a bright red light. It spread its black feathers and flew out at a speed faster than usual. It arrived at the foot of the active volcano, on a rock patch where the lava had frozen. It stood there. The fire element essence began to take effect. The red light became brighter and brighter, as scarlet threads emerged from its body, wrapping around Little Fire Crow. It was similar to Silkworm Baby's evolution. In the blink of an eye, crimson light intertwined, forming a gigantic light cocoon that enveloped Little Fire Crow within. The light cocoon kept absorbing the nutrients around it. This was the new world, so there was a higher concentration of spiritual energy. With his naked eye, Su Hao could even see the countless tiny red light dots gathering around him. The environment was better, and the momentum was greater. His eyes were fixed on it as he looked around its surroundings from time to time. Little Fire Crow wasn't the only sprite going through an evolution in the vicinity. A few kilometers to the left, Su Hao saw another red cocoon of light. Behind it, halfway up the mountain, other sprites also stepped on the magma that had yet to cool down. Flames rolled over from all around. The great momentum was more than 10 times that of Little Fire Crow's evolution. It's probably a fire element sprite evolving to its final form. Both of those sprites had owners. The evolution of wild sprites would probably be more hidden. Time passed second by second. On the left, the flame-patterned hound evolved into a two-headed hound before it broke out of its cocoon, and left not long after. Halfway up the mountain, the huge light cocoon hidden under the flames also broke apart, revealing a behemoth that was 2 stories tall. Lava Dragon Turtle. It roared towards the sky as the flames it spewed out turned into a rain of fire, gushing down noisily. The Lava Dragon Turtle was extremely large and weighed as much as a ton. It felt as though the earth was shaking with every step it took. However, it was still quite a distance away from Little Fire Crow. As a sprite with an owner, it also knew not to interfere with the alliance rules of other sprites' evolution. It made a slight detour and walked down the mountain slowly. Su Hao saw a sprite trainer leap up onto the back of the turtle. The Lava Dragon Turtle carried its sprite trainer away. Perhaps it was due to the intimidating aura of the Lava Dragon Turtle. During Little Fire Crow's evolution process, no blind wild sprites came to disturb them. It made Su Hao's heart ache a little for the small amount of money he had spent on hiring a guard. Finally, the light cocoon absorbed enough nutrients. When the red light had blossomed to its brightest, it quickly faded away. At the same time, cracks appeared on the light cocoon. It shattered with a bang. Ding! Your sprite, Little Fire Crow, has completed its evolution and become a new form, Flaming Cloud Crow. Ding! Your sprite Flaming Cloud Crow's data is being updated. A black feathered crow, which looked like a fiery red scarf, spread its wings and flew towards them. Its body was larger than the previous Little Fire Crow, but it was still a small sprite overall. Su Hao couldn't ride it. It circled and spread its wings. It had clearly completed the black feather's evolution, but it was still emitting a dazzling red light. Translucent feathers of fire lined up one by one, covering the flaming crow's body. It looked like it was covered with a layer of flaming feathers. It was mighty and extraordinary. Its cry spread far and wide. Coincidentally, the active volcano at the back erupted again with a boom. Amidst the dark grey clouds, countless pieces of rock with flames flew down, the scene looking like a vast meteor shower. The gravel hit the flaming crow and broke with a bang. The falling fire rain and the surrounding flames were all absorbed by it. Its flaming feathers became brighter and brighter, the patterns clearly visible on them. It was bathed in flames, sparking a dazzling red glow. Looking like a blazing sun. Chapter 93, College Entrance Examination Rules. The journey back was peaceful. Su Hao didn't know whether to be worried or anticipating the sprite hunter's appearance, but fortunately they didn't appear. Perhaps it was due to the tight schedule. Perhaps it was also due to his elite-level expert bodyguard Huang Tianhu. It was more likely that the value of the Reverie Butterfly wasn't that high. A month ago, shortly after I came out of the Valley of Sighs, Master Chen Ping nurtured a second Reverie Butterfly. Now, although Reverie Butterflies are rare, my sprite is no longer the unique one. The train has arrived at the station, An City Station. Alighting passengers, please bring along your personal belongings and alight in an orderly manner. After more than a month, Su Hao finally returned to An City. Gurgle. Squawk. The Reverie Butterfly was lying on his head. On the other hand, the mighty fiery velvet crow had lost its shoulder position due to its large size. It flew around, occasionally landing on car roofs or other higher positions. The two were obviously extraordinary sprites, so they attracted the attention of the other tourists at the bus stop. No wonder it's said that wanted sprite trainers can't hide easily. Bringing sprites along would attract attention everywhere you go, well, mainly in small cities like in City. In Magic City, it was not uncommon to see sprite trainers riding tigers, lions, and other ferocious-looking sprites on the streets. Ordinary people who didn't intend to walk the path of a sprite trainer would also contract sprites and rear them as pets. To put it simply, an expense of more than 100,000 yuan wasn't expensive in the eyes of many. But there are a lot more sprites in the recent years. In the past, not only would a sprite cost at least hundreds of thousands, it was also very difficult to buy one. Su Hao heard. Large cities like Magic City had already started to categorize sprites. Those who raised sprites as pets could enjoy appropriately relaxed restrictions, but they could only contract a small number of sprites with relatively less destructive power. For example, Silkworm Baby, Mini Pig, Silk Cotton Owl, Little Seashell, Salted Fish King, etc. Without much cultivation, those sprites were really just pets. Unlike flame-patterned hounds, flame lizards, grassland wolves, and so on, sharp claws and teeth were innately lethal. In addition, sprites whose size or weight exceed the limit are forbidden from going on the road. For example, the lava dragon turtle, the seaside frog king, the giant armored crab, and the other sprites had huge bodies and were too impactful. Once they went on the streets, it would be too easy to create chaos. Even in large cities, sprites in their final form were similarly rare. After reaching the elite level, sprite trainers often buy villas and manors in the suburbs to house their sprites. Powerful sprite trainers are never alone. The team alone responsible for nurturing, feeding, and taking care of the sprites behind their backs already comprises of a lot of people. There are also sprite trainers who abandon their main sprites for training in the new world, but they must also leave their main sprites on planet Aquamarine. On the day the school bus was attacked, Coach Xiong and President Luo each summoned an elite-level sprite. Later on, Su Hao learned that Luo Jinghong didn't just rely on a mountain-moving ape to secure his position as An City's deputy president. He also had another elite-level sprite with a slight weakness. But that sprite was in the new world. There was an immeasurable distance between him and planet Aquamarine. It was impossible to summon his sprite from the new world to planet Aquamarine with just the sole power of an elite sprite trainer. Su Hao's eyes darted upwards. There were benefits to having a small body size. The fairy butterfly that had evolved from Reverie Butterfly wasn't that big either. It was at most as tall as its waist. It was also an illusion element sprite with strong senses. As long as it was allowed to learn a supplementary protection unique skill, it would be his first choice for personal protection. But it was rather expensive. After returning to An City, Su Hao first went back to his old house, and then headed to the new house given by the association and the real estate company. His parents had long moved there. Su Hao observed for a moment. The security team in the area was made up of retired soldiers and sprite trainers. The team leader was a high-level sprite trainer. In a small place like An City, this was already considered pretty good battle power. The neighborhood was also close to the association of sprite trainers. If anything really happened, elite-level sprite trainers would rush over within 3 to 5 minutes. Of course. In a city like Dragon Nation, he had not heard of a single terrorist organization attack. Not to mention sprite trainers, even elite-level sprites might not be able to stand the sudden burst of special firearms. It's already past 3. Su Hao glanced at his cell phone and immediately threw the idea of returning to school to the back of his mind. In any case, the new semester had already started a long time ago, and he had skipped classes for more than 3 to 5 days. It made no difference even if he skipped another day. The next day, Thursday. After sleeping in for a while, Su Hao got up from bed, took his time to wash up, and finally set off for An City First High. He was still riding a shared bicycle he had gotten from the roadside. It didn't suit his identity as a genius sprite trainer. Do you want to buy a car? In any case, a car that costs more than 100,000 to 200,000 yuan is already pretty good. He glanced at his account balance. He had just transferred 500,000 yuan to his parents a while ago. In total, he had spent more than 1,000,000 yuan hiring Huang Tianhu and buying evolutionary materials for Little Fire Crow. The remaining amount was only 200,000 to 300,000 yuan. Perhaps it was because it was very easy to get money, Su Hao spent it a little too extravagantly. The few improved unique skills he uploaded still had an income of more than 100,000 yuan per month. He thought about it for half a minute and decided to forget it. It's too troublesome to learn to drive. Driving isn't as good as riding a mount. As a sprite trainer, you should follow in the footsteps of the new era and contract a sprite that you can ride and resist. Now, Su Hao was full of energy as he pedaled like a wheel of fire. It was supposed to be a 20-30 minute journey, but he managed to get there in 10 minutes. When he arrived at the school gate and put down the bicycle, Su Hao seemed to have heard cracking sounds from the shared bicycle, clearly not able to bear the burden. The quality of bicycles these days is just terrible. At the door of Class 2's classroom, Su Hao noticed that he had arrived at the right time. The first period had just begun. Old Chen, the form teacher, wrote a few large words on the blackboard, "College Entrance Examination Rules." Su Hao knocked on the door softly. After seeing Old Chen's nod, he returned to his seat that he hadn't seen in a long time. He came back quite suddenly. Lu Ren, Li Songting, and the others in the class were all shocked. The missing person has returned. Big Boss Su is finally out of seclusion. It's time for Silkworm God Butterfly God to suppress the school again. Although they were having a lesson and the students under Old Chen didn't dare to speak. They showed their amazing abilities. Some either set up a book in front of them so that they could take out their cell phones to open the group chat, while some reached under the table and hit the buttons on their phones blindly. Instantly, dozens of messages appeared in the group chat. A class group? Form teacher Chen Fangjia, at everyone who is playing with their phones in class just now, double the training load today. Lu Ren. Li Songting was rendered speechless. Su Hao, who hadn't had the time to click on send yet, quietly cleared out the words he typed. He put his cell phone away, sat upright, and looked serious. Old Chen's gaze swept across them. Now, I'll talk about this year's college entrance examination rules. All students, pay attention and listen. Chapter 94, Su Hao vs Old Chen. On the podium, Old Chen spoke. Just yesterday, our school received instructions from the Association of Sprite Trainers. This year's college entrance examination is organized in the province, among which, the written examination, the spiritual force examination, and sprite battles are generally the same as previous years, but these are just the basics and they will only eliminate those students who can't get into sprite universities. In other words, if you want to get into a sprite university and a better university, you're destined to take the second round of the combat test. The combat test is similar to your joint examination, but there are more competitors. The provincial guild has also categorized the examination areas into different levels. For example, there are only a few entry-level sprites in the elementary examination area. The intermediate examination area is filled with entry-level sprites, with a small number of intermediate entry-level and very few advanced entry-level sprites. In the advanced examination area, there are more intermediate and advanced entry-level sprites. There are very few elite-level sprites. Defeating sprites of different levels will give you different marks, and the final combination of marks will be the total score of your combat test. So, the key point of your consideration is how to choose the examination area. She paused for a moment before continuing. Choosing an elementary examination area is less difficult and less dangerous, but at the same time, it's very difficult for you to get high marks. The upper limit for the intermediate and advanced examination areas is higher, but it may be due to the high difficulty level. Your final score may be lower as a result. Regarding the question on how to choose your examination area, in the last half a month before the college entrance examination, I will give you some advice based on your sprite's strength and combat level. Old Chen continued to talk about some detailed rules. This included the length of the examination and the specific restrictions. Unlike the joint examination, in the combat round of the college entrance examination, the candidates were not allowed to attack each other. However, the intensity of wild sprites would be much higher than the joint examination, similarly testing the candidates' survival ability and battle ability. At the moment, the tentative types of examination areas are forest, ancient ruins, isolated islands, and so on. However, we can't guarantee that the examination rules won't undergo changes before the college entrance examination. Therefore, while training, students need to pay close attention to related situations. The school will also draw up a corresponding teaching plan according to the college entrance examination rules. After class, Old Chen called Su Hao to her office. How did your training go for your two sprites during winter break? You didn't fall behind, right? Now that everyone is becoming stronger, you're far from being able to relax. Old Chen knew about Su Hao's training plans. But she was also worried that Su Hao had gotten high from playing outside for the past 2 months. It wasn't easy for First High to have nurtured a student who could suppress other high schools. If Su Hao went down the wrong path, the headmaster would definitely fight it out with her. Since you've returned to school, follow me to the training field. I want to test the level of your sprite. If you can't meet my requirements, I'll double your training for the new semester. Old Chen glanced outside the office door. A pancake face was peeking his head into the office. If you want to watch, come with me. Lu Ren quickly followed. There were also a few classmates whom Su Hao found familiar, but he couldn't remember their names. Hey, old Su, let's have a battle later. They walked out of the classroom building, feeling the sunlight shining on the field. Lu Ren pointed at a tortoise the size of an 8-story table in the distance. He raised his rounded double chin and said, "Look, my little charcoal tortoise has already evolved into a lava tortoise." He glanced at Reverie Butterfly. Although Lu Ren didn't think that the lava tortoise would be able to compete with the butterfly god after its evolution. But no matter what, it was still a meat shield sprite that was good at defense. A few moves between them shouldn't be a problem. Beside his feet was a little green-blue frog. This is the second sprite I've contracted, the blue water frog. I hope it can be like Heavenly King Zhou's Frog King in the future. It's such a pity how my blue water frog's level of cultivation isn't high enough, and it is rather different from your flaming cloud crow. Can you help me design a cultivation plan for my blue water frog? I'll transfer the money to you first. As they spoke, they followed Old Chen to the school's battle hall. There was an elderly man who was also a gatekeeper, judge, and cleaner in the battle hall. At this time of the day, each class had their own timetables, so there weren't many people in the battle hall. The gatekeeper opened the sole high-level battle stage in the center of the battle hall. It could withstand the battle of entry-level sprites. This was unlike ordinary venues, which required the construction team to fill in the gaps after a battle. Come, let your Reverie Butterfly use its full strength. Old Chen's marionette floated onto the battle stage. Reverie Butterfly also flew into the venue. Gurgle. It remembered the times when it was still a silkworm baby, when it trembled in fear just with a look from the marionette. But it's different now, gurgle. Su Hao's eyes focused on the marionette, observing its data. In the beginning, he was still wondering if he should use his full strength. Only he himself knew how strong his Reverie Butterfly was right now. Ordinary advanced entry-level sprites wouldn't last more than a few moves from the little rascal. But this marionette, it has already reached the upper limit of advanced entry level and it has a pretty good cultivation level. Logically speaking, it should have long reached elite level. He didn't think too much about it. Old Chen had already gotten the marionette to start probing. The energy ball condensed in front of it. Reverie Butterfly similarly threw out an energy ball too. 2 balls of similar colors brushed past each other in mid-air, shooting straight at each other. But the 2 sprites dodged nimbly. Bang! The energy balls hit the edges of the battle stage, and circles of faint ball-shaped shadows exploded on the transparent protective panel that rose up. When Old Chen saw this, her expression became much more solemn. She put away her initial idea of guiding Reverie Butterfly in the battle. Energy Ball. Reverie Butterfly flapped its wings and flew rapidly. 2 feelers on the top of its left and right hands condensed an energy ball each. The 2 balls spun and whooshed out. They sealed off the space for the marionette to dodge. Psychic Shield. 2 translucent shields appeared on both sides of the marionette, spinning around its body to block the few energy balls that came to it at high speed. Boom! 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 Smoke and dust exploded as shallow holes and cracks appeared on the battle stage, which was originally enough to withstand the battle between entry-level sprites. The shock wave spread in all directions. The 2 sprites exchanged blows rapidly between each other, throwing out several energy balls in a second. The speed of the Reverie Butterfly was fast, its movements were agile and graceful as it dodged the energy ball or granule machine gun flying towards it. The marionette's speed was not as fast, but the 2 psychic shields received an endless supply of psychic energy, making them much harder than the armored crab's carapace. Even after throwing dozens of energy balls at it, the 2 shields couldn't be broken. Psychic Shock. Use that move. Psychic power swept through the air, bringing with it a shock wave that seemed to have substance. At the same time, Reverie Butterfly's eyes lit up. Buzz. The chaotic vision caused the psychic attack to deviate and hit directly onto the protective plate at the edge, making the protective plate shake violently, as if it could explode any moment. After the marionette's body shook for a while, the psychic shield that couldn't hold any longer became solid again. Explosions rang out continuously as dust and smoke shrouded the entire battle stage. Lu Ren and his friends in the audience were all stunned. This is entry level? Lu Ren recalled the opponent he commanded the lava tortoise to defeat, and then he looked at the 2 sprites on the field. Well, they were already out of sight. He could only see a spinning energy ball flying out of the smoke and dust, passing over the protective plate and blasting onto a certain ordinary battle stage. A huge pit was blasted out with a boom, making Lu Ren shiver uncontrollably. For the safety of my lava tortoise, that so-called battle, I've never mentioned it before. Chapter 95, The college entrance examination was really too hard. In the end, there was no clear winner between Reverie Butterfly and Marionette. The battle arena's protective panel couldn't hold on any longer. This was a venue for students to battle in the first place. At the start of the school's establishment, it had never crossed their minds that there would be sprites with super specifications among the students. If it was 2 to 3 years ago, it would already be considered good if 2 to 3 entry-level sprites appeared in a batch of students. A few years ago, it was normal for third-year students to not have entry-level sprites. Old Chen was really surprised. It was already her 3rd year at An City First High. In the previous batch, before the college entrance examination, there were only 3 official sprite trainers in the entire First High. But this year, excluding Su Hao, the students Lu Ren, Li Songting, and Gu Linjiao were also very outstanding. At the start of the 2nd semester, their sprites had already broken through to entry level. Now, there were still more than 3 months to the college entrance examination. If they worked hard, the chances of them getting into a prestigious school would also be pretty high. After the round of examination, she was very satisfied with Su Hao. Not only did he not slack off at all, the extent of his sprite's improvement was much greater than she had ever imagined. That previous move was an I-type illusion, right? Yes. Old Chen didn't ask further. After all, she couldn't give much guidance in cultivation anymore. She could only give Su Hao some experience advice. In her eyes, the current Reverie Butterfly already possessed extremely strong competitiveness for the college entrance examination. She was looking more forward to its performance 3 months later. But as a teacher, she couldn't say these words out loud, in case Su Hao became too proud or complacent. Your little fire crow has also evolved. You have 2 entry-level sprites now, but you still can't let your guard down. She said, apart from those top students from Sprite trainer families and sect heirs, your opponents also include some candidates who cannot be underestimated. Under Su Hao's somewhat surprised gaze, she said 3 words. Repeat students. A repeat student of the cultural department may not be able to achieve better results even after a year of revision, but the Sprite stream is different. The Sprite stream emphasizes on nurturing sprites. All contracts are made before the 3rd year of high school. Your Sprite is only cultivated for a year, while the sprites of the repeat students are cultivated for 2 years. Even if their efficiency is inferior to yours, their sprites are definitely not weak. Apart from repeat students, there are also some who contract sprites in advance or some whose families have money and connections. Their descendants don't need to wait until the legal age of 16 to contract sprites. As long as the soul power evaluation criteria is met, they can totally contract sprites at the age of 15 or 14. Su Hao was indeed surprised. His slightly inflated mentality completely withered. The sense of danger increased. Indeed, in the line of sprite trainers, the duration of sprite cultivation and the amount of resources consumed largely determined the strength of a sprite. If he hadn't spent millions, he wouldn't have been able to bring out the value of the interface plan. Perhaps the cultivation plans of those top students were not as good as his. But with the support of their families, they had access to even more resources. It was even possible that they had high-level sprites to guide them step by step in learning unique skills and profound meanings. They had also cultivated sprites for a longer time than him. No, the college entrance examination is too difficult. Looks like I have to speed up the formation of my battle team. Looking at Su Hao's expression, Old Chen knew that he had listened to her words. She was very satisfied. Outstanding, but not complacent. They were the teacher's favorite students. But Old Chen knew. The competitiveness of repeat students was, in fact, not that strong. Most of the repeat students did not manage to enroll in Sprite universities, and this was why they had to study for a 2nd year. According to the Dragon Nation's regulations, Sprite stream students could only enroll for 1 additional year. There were also a minority who would study for an additional year in order to enroll in a prestigious Sprite school. These people were threatening candidates on the same level as Lu Ren and Gu Linjiao. Why would truly outstanding students waste an extra year's time revising when they could enroll in a prestigious Sprite school? The descendants of Sprite trainer families who could contract in advance were indeed the most competitive candidates. But most families wouldn't do that. The 3rd year of high school was only a year to lay the foundation. Entering university was the stage of rapid progress. Contracting in advance and then defeating a bunch of mediocre people? It was meaningless. There are still Sprite trainer geniuses who contracted in advance. But those geniuses also took the college entrance examination and entered university in advance. On the way back to class, Su Hao remembered that Lu Ren previously wanted a battle. What do you think? Shall we fight after class? Lu Ren shook his head like a rattle drum. Your butterfly god has experienced a hearty battle. It's no longer suitable for another battle. I can use my flaming cloud crow, after all, fire element is better for warm UPS. Lu Ren casted a glance at the flaming cloud crow. Its feathers were rich with luster, red and bright like flames, black and cold like steel. It stood on a branch and looked straight ahead, not moving at all. However, it gave off a vague invincible aura. It was invincible. Lu Ren declined decisively. In the afternoon, Li Songting's challenge highlighted Su Hao's foresight even further. Li Songting sent out his main force, Kung Fu Pup's evolved form, ascetic dog, a dog-type sprite reaching an adult's chest. Su Hao sent out flaming red crow. Lu Ren was very familiar with Li Songting's ascetic dog. Its actions were swift. Its every punch was able to hit the opponent's flesh while its every slash could cut the water. But Flaming Crow was faster. The boxing master who had been painstakingly cultivating couldn't win the ghostly blades in the end. It was badly beaten. Li Songting and his ascetic dog were still full of fighting spirit. They still wanted to have a battle with Reverie Butterfly after they recovered. I can't do it, I can't do it. Lu Ren looked up at the sky and let out a long sigh. After taking a walk around the school, Su Hao still didn't participate in the school's training. He just came to report his attendance and experience the long-lost campus atmosphere. I'm clearly just a high school student, why should I bear the loneliness that I shouldn't be experiencing at my age? With a tablet computer, he logged into the forum of the Union of Sprite Trainers. Butterfly, if I add a new partner for you, what do you hope it will be like? Gurgle? Degree. Gurgle. Gurgle, gurgle. It gave him a glance and flew away. Flaming Cloud Crow was on the tree. Squawk, squawk. It tilted its head and continued to stare blankly. Su Hao's fingers fiddled with the tablet. Now that he had better conditions, he naturally wanted to contract sprites with higher aptitudes. Even though no sprites were of bad quality and as long as one had resources and cultivation plans, the sprite's future was limitless. Isn't contracting a higher starting point sprite that was easier to nurture still more attractive? Fire Cloud Crow was a chance discovery, while the discovery of Reverie Butterfly was luck. Su Hao discovered that the little rascal had some extraordinary qualities. For example, an outstanding learning ability. It could understand most of the words in a month, and it could also operate the computer skillfully in just 2 months. It knew how to draw inferences in battle. It could complete the training tasks that it was assigned to on time. He originally thought that Sprite's learning abilities were also strong. It was only later that he discovered that, hey, why were all the other sprites so dumb? It must be because he nurtured the little rascal from a young age into a cultured sprite. Moreover, he had taken a fancy to it at first glance among the vast number of silkworm babies and then contracted it. As expected of me. Su Hao felt that contracts emphasized affinity between the eyes. He scrolled through the forum with his fingers, hoping to find a sprite fated with him.